So I think software and product building is like fundamentally changing right now. If I think about it, agents are different. One, they're driven by LLMs, so they're non-deterministic in both their outputs and their actions. So that's a key difference. The other big difference is traditionally we built software to be driven by like form fields, right? You clicked a button, an API request happened, some small thing happened on the server, like a database lookup, and you got a response and you were done, right? And this whole process took a few milliseconds. So that was the past. Now we click a button or send a chat message, and then the request goes to the server and the thing works for minutes or hours or sometimes days, and it's this like long running thing, right? So that is different. It's non-deterministic, it's long running. It's also different because it's very kind of streaming oriented. You're not sending a request, getting a response. Sending a request and getting a whole series of responses over a long period of time.
It's almost like a conversation between a human and a machine that's constantly happening.
That's a really good analogy. I would wager that building agents is more similar to building a chat system like WhatsApp, or a streaming system like, video communication like we're doing right now. It's more similar to that than it is to building a SaaS application, right? So agentic apps are closer to this type of software. And what's different is in the past, I think only like 10% of the software building community built this type of software. Very few people build WhatsApp or Zoom or things like that. Most people build form-based 3-tier web apps, right? But now I think it's going to flip. Most people will have to build streaming, real-time distributed systems, and that's fundamentally different. Not only that, and you use this example of like humans are talking to machines, but it's also we're building for this autonomous world. So it's also agents and machines talking to other machines. That is also a bi-directional streaming conversation. And this is like a fundamentally different class of software that only a few people with systems engineering and distributed systems background used to build. But now most people have to build this new kind of software. And so I think we're in a fundamentally different world in terms of engineering. And I also think like software engineering is getting harder, not easier, which I think is counterintuitive at the moment because you can just generate a whole bunch of code. I think those are some elements of like what's different now.
Again, a couple of questions from that. I know that you mentioned LLMs are generating code, which is supposed to mean that writing software must be easy. But I think what is happening is writing application software is easy, but the systems part of it is becoming harder because of all the challenges that you spoke about. Some of the challenges is about if actually two agents are autonomous, number one, how do they discover each other? And once they discover, how do they trust each other? And once they trust each other, how do they constantly establish their trust and then communicate with each other about their skills and capabilities and use those skills to perform certain tasks that they're organized to do? So how do you think this part is evolving when there are autonomous agents that are working together to solve a problem?
Yeah, really good question. I'll also challenge the part about application software is getting easier. So let me touch on that first, and then I'll come to the how systems changing. So application software was actually a lot easier earlier. You wrote software, you wrote some tests, and then it worked the same every time. Like it was always reliable. It did exactly what you programmed it to do, right? Now, not so much. Program it to do something, then it might do that, or it might not, right? And so now you have to build, at the application layer, you have to engineer reliability. You have to have eval. You have to have a feedback loop of like, if the user asked it to do X, did it actually do X or did it do something else, right? So you need a whole sort of analysis and evaluation infrastructure. So I think app software is also getting, in terms of like making reliable tools, getting harder. But yes, generating code is getting easier, which is I think a chunk of time software engineers used to spend, but a lot of it is engineering, architecture, design. Those parts are getting harder, even at the app layer. But to your question about like the systems layer, the challenges are the scale is kind of exploding, right? The scale of what we used to do versus scale of what we have to do now is exploding, right? So I'll illustrate this as an example. If you have a system where a button gets clicked on the UI, a request goes to the server, some database queries happened, and a response is sent, you're only spending a few milliseconds on the server.
Right.
And you can have, if you have 10,000 users of your product, all 10,000 of them only need a few milliseconds on the server, right? In terms of compute. So you can build a single server and you can support 10,000 clients on a little server, right? But if you are building agents, an agent is taking minutes, hours, or sometimes days of compute time on a machine. The machine's occupied. It's taking space. The agent is there doing something. There is no room for another customer there. And so now, time sharing compute is a harder problem. If you have 10,000 customers to support, it probably can't be easily fit unless you engineer the system to handle it properly in one machine. State is long lived, right? That server, in fact, we used to delegate state off to clients. Like we would do session variables, and we like no state on the server, stateless servers, serverless systems. These were all kind of stateless things, right? But now an agent has long-term state. So you need a primitive and a mechanism to think about state for a very, very long period of time. This is just harder engineering, right? And so fundamentally how to build software is changing. And then comes the problem of like collaboration and getting agents to talk to other agents to talk to other existing systems. And that also, opens up this whole can of worms around how do you do trust. It's bi-directional. So earlier, we used to be able to get away with,
Unidirectional. Yeah.
unidirectional API request type workflows, but now it's a bidirectional flow. But building a bidirectionally communicating system is just fundamentally harder. You now need session state on both sides of that communication. You now need to think about order of messages. So protocols like TCP tackle that and, gave us primitives to think about order, but you have to think about buffers on both sides. You have to think about those buffers can't run out. Like it's just harder engineering compared to I sent a request, I had some little JSON object in memory for a few milliseconds, and then I threw the object away, right? It was much, much simpler, not so much in this like new world.